What's up, YouTube, and welcome back to Spector's Game Room. Today we're taking a look at a game that I totally didn't have to play in Japanese due to it being released in PAL regions, but I'm kinda glad I did for reasons I'll explain in a minute. The game of the week is The Firemen, published by Human Corporation, and as the title suggests, you are a fireman fighting fires in a high-rise building. Sounds like the perfect setup for some relatively repetitive action that ultimately leads to a forgettable game, right? Maybe? Well, luckily not, as The Firemen is actually a pretty solid title. An opening title crawl brings you into the game's world and scenario. You, Captain Pete, with your most majestic of Selleckian mustaches, I might add.
He looks like Tom Selleck. When I die, I want you to cremate me and throw my ashes in Tom Selleck's face.
That's a crazy request.
I get it.
As you lead a 5-person unit of firefighters on a call to Metrotech Chemical Company, where a fire was left to burn in a kitchen somewhere in the building, long enough that the whole building is now up in smoke. Good stuff, people who work there. Now, the thing is, there's a highly explosive chemical in the building that will explode and presumably kill hundreds, maybe thousands? Game's a little bit ambiguous. They didn't specify. But the stakes are high. That's what's important. You gotta get that chemical to the roof so that the roof water towers can put it out for good or something. Cool, good enough premise for me. You take on fires of the building with your crazed axe-wielding partner Daniel. My guess is he wields an axe due to the infamous Super Nintendo slowdown and the strain that 2 streams of water would have put on the system. But that's purely a guess on my part. I hope there was a reason. Is the dude, I mean, he's swinging at fires with an axe. That's not a good choice. That's like what you chop at a door at. You don't chop at the fires with it.
That's some nice chopping.
Whatever, you do you, Daniel. You do you. The opening title crawl starts off on a good note. The year's 2010, again, with the 2010s and 2020s. And civilization has progressed little in the last 20 years. Accurate prediction there, Human Corp. I found it interesting that the opening title was in English, and honestly thought I was playing a patched game of the Japanese version, having previously thought the game only came out in the Japanese region, not knowing about the PAL release. But of course, the rest of the dialogue came through is Japanese, so that really definitely limited my ability to know what the hell was going on. But luckily, it did make a difference, because this game, despite there being some dialogue along the way, doesn't really change the fact that it's really good gameplay. So if you do play the Japanese version, you're not going to miss much. Now, you have an endless stream of water coming out of some unknown pocket of space-time that Pete can access somehow. I guess it's part of all of his commendations. It's an 8-directional stream with a low spurt that you can use to put out flames that are more obstacles than damaging, kind of things you can't pass by without using your spurt. You can also duck and crawl, which will become essential as the game progresses, and then water bombs with a limited capacity. The game actually has tons of variety with a bunch of different fire patterns that keep the game interesting, as well as malfunctioning robots and other obstacles that the building starts throwing your way as it starts to fall apart. The game gets quite hard towards the end, and you'll be doing all your 5Ds of dodgeball to get through this one and save the day, presumably to get another commendation. The game really made a point of pointing out that Pete has 3, according to the opening title crawl, so you're gonna get your 4th by taking on all those dang robots and putting out that fire. Good for you, Pete, you brave mustachioed man. The sprite work in this game is actually really awesome. The game mechanics are fluid, and despite how much shit is on the screen, I didn't encounter any slowdown. Maybe there is some and I just didn't notice it, but no slowdown. Pretty impressive. Speaking of, I mentioned how I was glad I played the Japanese version unintentionally for this video. And the reason is that the speed of the PAL versus NTSC consoles is a thing. I mean, it's not a major thing, but for those of you who don't know, PAL region games run at 50 megahertz, while the NTSC runs at 60 megahertz. Guess what else runs at 60 megahertz? Japanese Super Famicoms. So if I hadn't played this version of the game, I wouldn't know how friendly it would be to non-Japanese speakers, which is a good thing, because the 50 megahertz, albeit not a noticeable slowdown, I guess to some people they might notice it, but it's more so the compatibility. You can't just jam PAL region game into an NTSC console and play it. Japanese games, on the other hand, as I mentioned in the last video, rip those 2 tabs out of the back of your Super Nintendo, slot the game right in, Bob's your uncle. I happen to do this for Space Megaforce, which sells for a jaw-dropping $450 on average, but when I picked up Super Aleste for the Super Famicom, which is all in English for some reason, it was much, much cheaper. I don't even think I paid over 80 for it, probably like 70 or something like that. But yeah, rip the tabs out. Wish I did that for, Macross Scrambled Valkyrie. That could have saved me a reproduction card. Now, if you are going to play it in Japanese, just know that the select button will skip past most of the text. It's not not a full skip, it's just kind of like a speed button to move it past, but it gets the job done. Now, at the time of this video, it seems as though you can still get your hands on the Japanese version of this game for around $50 with shipping, which is definitely a decent price. I mean, I know some people are against paying anything over like $20, $25, but I think this is reasonable, and I definitely recommend this game. I might not recommend this game highly enough to spend that kind of money. I mean, if you're really digging it, it's not too bad, but the game is an awesome example of a simple premise of fighting fires that lives up to more than the sum of its parts. And of course, it helps that the fires seem to be sentient to give you a good old fight. Because I mean, fire bosses? Sure, why not? Yeah, that makes sense. It's chemical fires. After all, not much has progressed in 20 years for human evolution, but they didn't say anything about what fires are up to for the past 2 decades. Anyways, check this one out, you won't be disappointed. As always, I'm Spector, and thanks for stopping by my game room.